What's going on, you guys? It is Coach Ike, and we have another episode of Everything Uncovered. Man, I am truly excited for my guest. But before we get into that, you guys make sure you follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we on Threads, we are on social media, Coach Ike's DB training, as well as TikTok and YouTube, as well as try out our free defensive back discussion group where if you want to improve your DB skills, this is a group where we go over the things that you're struggling with and we give all this information away as a community to help you reach your goals this season. So without further ado, I would love to bring in my guest. My guest is my former teammate. We are about the same height, so we understand the plight and the things of being overlooked, but that did not stop us to achieve big things. My guy, Josh Ferguson, man, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here, man. Looking forward to chopping it up. And, yeah, man, I've been watching the ones in the past, and I'm excited. Looking forward to it.
Nah, man, it's awesome to have you on, man. Highly respected, bro. Not a guy who speaks a lot, but to have you on is awesome. And I think your story and your perspective will definitely be awesome for these young men who are coming up because you have made the transition out from football, which is not the easiest thing for us as athletes. We get caught up in our identity of who we are, and we think sports is what truly defines us, but you have made the transitions in life, and we'll get into those things. So once again, man, I appreciate you. So my question for you, first question, man, you are from Hayward, so you from Northern California, man. Explain your upbringing, man.
Um, Really, since as young as I can remember, it was always sports. I started playing baseball, t-ball, like 5 or 6 years old. Basketball was shortly after that, maybe kindergarten, first grade, and then football actually wasn't until later in life. But it was always sports. Family was always active, parents always involved, got me in stuff. And I remember being a young kid at like Pops' softball games, and we'd be off on the side, playing baseball by ourselves or whatever. So like sports would just kind of bred into me and always around and involved in sports growing up.
Man, so we know the sports and everybody, parents, whatnot, our upbringing really mold us and help us be the athletes that we are. So I want to go into high school, man. So, I'm from Southern California. We talked earlier before getting on. So how is Northern California as far as sports and in general when it comes to football?
In general, when it comes to football, up north, uh, at the time back when I was in high school, I won't say how long ago it was, but things change, they evolve over time. But back when I was in high school, I'm sure there's probably a lot of similarities still going on today, but it was a direct path as far as like what you wanted for your future. There wasn't much middle ground. It was like either you're gonna be in the streets and get caught up X, Y, and Z, or you can take your school serious and take advantage of the opportunities that sports provided you. And there was plenty of blueprints that we could watch as young kids growing up. Guys like Eddie House, all kinds of like big time athletes. Like we admired and respected what they did within their sports. And we also had that same awareness, though, that we can't get to whatever level they're going to without the school part of it, without being a good person, not being too deep in the streets. So that was kind of a balancing act for a lot of kids growing up because it's easy to sway one way or the other. But yeah, growing up, it's just I remember looking up to some of the guys and watching how they move, throughout life. Because once the whistle blows, whatever sport you playing, you still got to go back. I'm not going to say necessarily reality, but you still got to go back to the real world. So that's another navigation in itself. So yeah, that balancing act, you fine tune it when you grow up in certain environments and you figure it out.
Nah, for sure. Not everyone comes from, an environment where it's a little chaotic, you know. But like you said, that blueprint and following where you want to go, I think that's very important. And our children, they have to make a decision, and their blueprint necessarily is different now compared to ours. Ours was out in the street because we was out and about. Now with social media, which is a whole different thing, man. But can you share your recruiting process because college recruiting has changed. NIL, transfer portal, all these things are out now, and this is the new norm. But can you share your recruiting process for you coming out of high school?
For me personally, it was a little, I didn't go to a big high school. I mean, we were a decent sized school, and we weren't a football school necessarily. It was actually probably my senior year where we made that transition. Hayward High was a basketball school all the way up until about 2002, 2003, and we kind of, turned the tables because we had such a good football program at that point. Um, so recruiting wasn't, we weren't seeing, the big name schools. We weren't recruiting guys to come in and live in our district to play, play for our team. It just kind of, we built the team organically. And
Mhm.
so then you start to see the big schools come by. We had a defensive end that was ranked like number 2 in the nation. We had a wide receiver that was really good. So we started seeing these bigger schools. So, as a secondary effect, they're looking at them on film, and they start to see other people. You put out good film.
Yeah.
So recruiting for me was kind of tough. Being undersized, they're looking at the numbers first, right? They want to see how tall you are, how much you weigh, how fast can you run. And unfortunately, at the time, we didn't have the tool of social media. And so trying to gauge all that thing on film without seeing it in person, it's hard to do. You can gauge talent on film, but there's some things that you can't see, especially for guys like ourselves that are undersized. You can't, the film doesn't quite produce what you can do in person.
Right.
So unless those schools come out to see you, it makes it tough. On top of, you really need your coaching staff to vouch for you.
Mhm.
You got to have them on your side. They got to have your back. And again, it's like they want to, they have their reputation. They want to keep their word strong. They don't want to put their neck out there and then you end up being a bust. So I had a coach that was that ride or die for me. Our head coach was I wouldn't say that he wasn't necessarily on the same page, but he wasn't necessarily pushing us and had that belief that we could all go and play defensive one football. So that was kind of another obstacle that I had to. I mean, realistically, I can't really say I blame him.
Mhm.
I was a 5'7" cornerback. I wasn't blazing fast, but he knew what I could do on the field, and so that was kind of where the fall off came.
Nah, and it's crazy because I also read that, an article that you played linebacker, you played quarterback, you played running back. So you did it all. And I say to coaches who recruit now because they want athletes. And if you see a guy who can do all these things and you understand, like, man, this guy has potential regardless of his size. And I said this, I've been saying this for years, and I'll probably say it, this is my first time saying in public. This is why I respect the SEC. They don't care who you are. If you got a skill set, they're going to use you. They don't care about your size, anything. And the Big Ten, Pac-12, Pac-10, Pac-12, when it was here, guys, if you was not tall, they was not messing with you. Like
Sure.
hands down, it didn't matter how good you was. And I never liked that for the Pac-10, Pac-12 ever. And you will see a lot of guys from California that go out to Utah, that go out to Colorado, and they balling and they wondering, other than SC at the time in Oregon, no other schools were really producing at a high level. Y'all letting all the talent go out. So
Yep.
it's unfortunate that, these coaches, they go, and mind you, we both played at that level, that D1 level. So I'm not saying like, man, you got to get a guy just because, you see the ability. Of course, you still got to produce. But at the same time, you getting a guy just because he has size doesn't guarantee anything either. Doesn't guarantee success. So, man, I appreciate you sharing that, man. So I didn't realize that you went the JUCO route as myself, bro. Prior to you attending JUCO, did you know anything about it? And then what was your experience up there once you got to JUCO?
I knew a little bit about it, and again, it's everything's generational. Things change over time. Back when I was coming out of high school, my exposure or impression of the junior college system was it was for bounce backs, guys that maybe went to a bigger college, and for whatever reason, whether it was grades, they couldn't play, whatever it was, they bounced back because we couldn't transfer without that penalty of having to sit out a year, at least not in the same at the same level. you'd have to go D1 or D2 or 1AA or something like that. So a lot of guys would bounce back to big college, or I'm sorry, to junior colleges from big colleges. City College, Laney College was a local. Chabot is where I ended up at. And so that was kind of my impression was like, well, um, I got recruited out of high school to go play at a couple. I had a few D1 offers, some partials and stuff, and so I chose the Air Force because that was the best one on the table at the time. And it turned out that the Air Force, that military life, wasn't what I wanted to do with college. That just wasn't. It wasn't me. So I bounced back. I had the grades. I had other opportunities. Could have played. I probably could have played at the Air Force Academy. I went to the prep school, so I didn't burn that year. But I probably could have played that year at the academy. So none of those things were the reasons why I bounced back. I just wasn't comfortable as far as that's not what I wanted for college. And so looking back, trying to think about when I have to make this change, it was a big risk because I wasn't highly recruited in high school. So there weren't colleges waiting for me to come back. And, oh, Ferguson bounced back to junior college. Let's keep our eye on him. So you have to kind of like re-rack and start that recruiting process all over again, which it took a lot of faith. I think we talked about it before. Coach Jackson, he was my high school defensive back coach. He was my dog, and he ended up coaching at Chabot, and he was like, "Don't go to City, don't go nowhere else," because San Francisco City has been one of the top, top JUCOs for a long time. I don't know how they're doing lately, but for like decades, they were the junior college in Northern California where you go to City, you play, you're gonna get out. And he was like, "Don't go, trust me, I got you. Come play for me. We'll hold it down, and I'll get you out of here." Well, it took a lot of faith, along with all the hard work and stuff. But yeah, I went out on a limb, and again, Chabot wasn't known for their football team. Every now and then they'd get a little seed that would come out of there and produce something. They'll go to a bigger college, but it's not some powerhouse junior college program in Northern California. So that was another gamble that I took. But again, being confident in my ability, being confident in what Coach Jackson could do for me, I never second guessed it.
No, I think that's key. One of them, relationships, like for you to even get to the junior college you was at. And that's what kids don't understand. This is a relationship-based business at the end of the day. And that's how the world is in regards, everything else. But I also had a question because I had a teammate, and you probably can confirm this. I had a teammate at Middle Tennessee. He was at Air Force and he transferred there. Is it true that they only practice twice a week
Um,
when you was up there?
I feel like so the prep school we was definitely practicing more than twice a
God,
week. But they did have, I want to say, almost like a JV squad for the academy.
got
They
you.
may have, I don't know what their practice schedule looked like. We definitely practiced because that was what I had to look forward to. That was what kept me sane. I would have went crazy. I probably wouldn't have lasted more than 3 months if we was only practicing twice a week. Um,
For sure.
it might have been. I'm not sure. It could have been like the other team that was up at the academy, but the prep school we got it in.
Nah, so but that's even you sharing going to Chabot, like that's interesting because I went to Mount Sac. So Mount Sac is considered the best junior college in Southern California down here. So, you was like, I'm not going to essentially to city because there's gonna be so many people. So like my thought process, like if I can go to Mount Sac, which at the time I'm not knowing what Mount Sac is, uh, Coach Martin, Coach Demetrius Martin, Coach Meat, who's now at Michigan State, he's from my area, recruited me up there. So, I'm not knowing, but realizing like, if I can play here, I'm for sure getting out because we had guys, we were always in the playoffs. Actually, the year before I got up to Mount Sac, they actually played City College in the championship game and they lost to him. So, I'm like, man, if I go up here, I'm for sure if I ball out, guaranteed I'm getting out. And it's crazy, like you like, look, I'm not going here. I'm just gonna write my different path. And that's actually what's going on in JUCO right now. Like kids are no longer going to the top schools. They realize like forget just being on a team. I want to be the player, the guy on my team, regardless of my stats. Like I'm not sacrificing. I need film. And actually, it's pretty smart because these kids are playing right away, getting exposure that they would have still gotten, but at a later date, they instantly able to make an impact on their team. Now they might sacrifice, winning or winning championship, but I think that's a smart way to go. And did you really feel like that was, looking back at it now, like that's the decision that you was going on, or was it just based off your coach alone?
Really, it was solely based off my coach because I'm looking at options. I knew I wanted to go back home.
Yeah.
Um, and I had played against, when we were in the Air Force at the prep school, we played against like Garden City. These are bigger junior colleges on the other side of the country, pretty well known. I'm like, okay, same thing. We're reading their roster. They got bounce backs from, Oklahoma, big schools. And so that had kind of been on my radar, but I was like, nah, I want to go back home. And when I talked to Coach Jack, I talked to him before every single game. And so when I talked to him at the end of the season, he'd always tap in with me, check the temperature, see what's on my mind. And I told him I was bouncing back. He was like, don't go to City, because he already knew, like, if you're gonna bounce back and you could play, you're probably gonna go to City.
Oh,
And so you made a good point. Not knowing what the climate was at City, what the politics side of it looked like, they could make promises to X amount of players that sit this one out, and we got you next year. Next year you'll be that guy. Like you could be better than the guy that you have to sit behind, but for them it's a system, right? And their system works because of how they built it. And so I'm 100% content with my decision and the way that it played out, because I don't know if the grass was going to be greener over there. I know I could have went over there and competed for the top spot
yeah.
for sure, hands down. But the opportunities that I was able to create for myself by changing paths, I'm not confident that I necessarily would have been in the same boat if I would have went to City. Like, yeah, the bigger schools might have came and looked and this and that, but would I've had to sit out a year because they made promises, or the politics, the coaches, this and that? Like, I had a relationship with Coach Jack, that I knew he knew what I could do. I knew who he was as a coach, and really, I had only played 4 years of football, I guess 5 years if you count the Air Force prior to that. So I still had a lot of growing, a lot of learning to do as far as the game itself went. And having Coach Jack early on in my football career helped me, help teach me these things. That was how I was able to play all of these different positions and pick up the game so quickly and understand it. So yeah, I think 11 times out of 10, if I was in that situation again, I go back. And that was just the confidence that I had, like I said, in my ability and in Coach Jack.
No, no, for sure. And one more question before I go on to our next subject. Can you explain, because I understand, we understand what prep school is, but for our audience who doesn't know, can you explain what the prep school is a little bit?
Right. So the prep school is for graduated seniors. So you graduated high school, and it doesn't burn a year of eligibility. You can go play at the prep school. You can attend school. The way the Air Force Academy was set up, you have to test in. First, you have to get recruited and selected in order to go there, and then you have to test in. You have to have a certain score in your SATs in order to be eligible for the academy. I broke that score. I was eligible to go, but I was like, military life, Colorado Springs. I'm not feeling. I don't know, right? I'm not. It doesn't get me all warm, and I don't get good feelings about this. So we'll see, and we'll try it out, right? Um, and it's a free year of eligibility. We played against some of the top community colleges all across the country. Got to travel, some good exposure, good experience. But the key was that it didn't burn that year of eligibility. And if I wanted to, I could have taken that game film and probably tried to, recruit for myself to get out there. Um, but yeah, so that year, there's not much of a difference. It's like you're a freshman in college, but you get that free year. So it's not quite a university type atmosphere, but it's also not high school. It's kind of that middle ground in between. And again, that was probably one of the best decisions I could have made, because I got to grow again as a football player, mentally and physically. I got more game experience. And the opportunities that it provided, after that door closed, was another good, it paved the way.
No, I think, because like I said, I think I learned about it like 2 years ago, really in depth. And I think it's a great tool, especially physically, if you need to develop your body and of course get those reps. So that gives you the opportunity without burning or having a gray shirt in JUCO or anything like that. So man, I think it's awesome. And I hate that most of it is on the East Coast, and I want more out here on the West Coast. But man, so JUCO is a monster in itself, bro. As far as off the field, on the field, attending school, bro. What was your biggest challenges you faced when you was in JUCO?
Well, right off top, nobody cares if you go to class or uh, really if you go to practice because JUCO coaches, and it's not quite a carousel like, bigger colleges. Those coaches, they could sit there and be content with going, 500 every season or knowing their job's not there. They might not be content, but it's not like somebody else is knocking at the door for your job. It's a junior college level. So going to class, nobody's checking your grades. Like it wasn't really at the time. We didn't. It wasn't like we got babysat like we did in high school, where let me see your weekly progress reports. Even at the prep school, we still had progress reports, and they wanted to tap in and make sure everything was good. But at JUCO, you really on your own. Like um, you got to be really independent and strong minded because there's so many different ways that you could be pulled. Not only the independence of being a student athlete, but in life. By the time you hit JUCO, you're an adult basically. So depending on what your family situation looks like, if you're not getting that support at home, you could be pulled to go get a job. You could be pulled to go, be in the streets. You can get pulled to go a number of other things. So having to minimize all those distractions and stay focused, um, that was. I don't want to say it was a challenge, but I knew it was something that others that I was around struggle with.
Oh,
And
no.
so I've always been. I learned by observing, right? And so my good friends that I grew up with, we're playing ball together. I'm watching, how they have to navigate through life because they might not have a father in the picture, or their household might be broken. They might not be financially stable. So a lot of them would show up, I'm just here to get this financial aid check. Like football is a plus. I'll sign up for classes, probably not going to go to, go to school, but I need this financial aid check, play a little football on the side for as long as I can until I become ineligible. Um, so there was a lot of that going on. And like I said, I observed all of that, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna fall into that trap. One, I was raised by a good mother and a good father, so I wasn't gonna let them down. I had a really good background and upbringing, and I wasn't gonna let them down. And then two, I wanted more for myself. I wasn't trying to waste time. I got a little taste of college, and I knew, like I said, I knew where I belonged, I guess. And
Yeah.
so I knew that JUCO was just a pit stop. That wasn't, the final stop. They wasn't waving the flag. JUCO was just a pit stop for me to re-rack and find the next opportunity.
Yeah. Nah, man, I think you just shared the best play for people. They get that financial check.
Man,
Hey, so
man,
many guys, if guys be like 6 years, 7 years at like, man, I got my check. That's all that matters, man.
check.
Man, but you shared, having to how to move in JUCO and the things that you face, especially as a student athlete, and now in this real world of not anybody over your shoulders, just making sure that you have to take care of those things. But how did JUCO like shape you both as a player and a person because of the things that you saw, of course. Knowing you, I know, like you said, you observe things, but at the same time, we all go through our own little things that we're dealing with, whether it be at home, at school, relationship wise. How did JUCO shape you though?
Um, man. So like I said, my parents, they kept me, they kept me right. They kept me sane. By the time I hit JUCO, they gave me that independence, right? They weren't necessarily hovering over me, watching my every move. And it was kind of a gift and a curse because you got to grow up quick, but at the same time, there's traps that are set everywhere, right? So I'm tiptoeing through traps, might step in one, you
Mhm.
know, dodging all kinds of things, and like the crowd that I was with outside of football, very blessed to be able to not fall into anything too deep because the opportunities were for sure there. It was definitely present,
Mhm.
and I remember thinking like we had a close call, and me and a few of my boys, and I'm like, man, this life would look a lot different if I didn't get this break. I guess basically, life would be a lot different. And so that was kind of like you got to grow up, really. I mean, there's no other choice. You can't stay in the same mindset mentality. It's been said, decades ago, and I'm sure they still say it today, but you can't do both.
Yep.
You can't be in the streets and still try and be, a top tier student athlete. It's not possible. Um, and so not that I was trying to be a street cat, but you're in that crowd, in that environment, there's a survival instinct that if that's the way you've been brought up, then you're gonna naturally be comfortable in that environment and climate. And so how comfortable do you want to get basically is kind of the biggest obstacle that I had. And that was a challenge, for a dude in his young 20s or 19 years old. You're feeling yourself, you're independent, you get a little bit of freedom. You start coming into your own, and maybe a little bit of ego involved. And so that's a real big challenge, especially if you haven't been coached through that before. Nobody in my family had ever played at least close to me and been in my ear, played at that level. I'm like, these are the things that you're going to encounter. Watch out for this, watch out for that. So fumbling my way through all of it, from, everything from girls, school, drug, whatever it might have been, fumbling my way through it and figuring it out. Like I said, luckily I didn't bump my head too many times. God had me protected and had a better plan for me, because I could have easily ended up with a different outcome.
Nah, that's key, exactly what you said, as far as, nobody was in your ear to help you guide you through this process, because they necessarily didn't go through the process. And that's the whole reason why for me training in this show is because I was fortunate. I'm not the first to go to college, but to go off a scholarship. I was the first in my family, athletic scholarship. So it's a lot of things that I went through that parents, brothers, sisters could not explain to me. But this is a way, by sharing our stories, like, man, this is what I did. Hopefully you learn for this. I can give you insight on what I did. It didn't work. Man, this is a better route, or this is what I did do. And I think that's important, what you just shared, man. So you do 1 year, bro. You ball out. I read that you led the nation, all of California, in punt returns and kick returns. So of course, all these schools are coming back up there. How was that second wave of recruiting for you? And then you end up going to UTEP. Share what made you make that decision.
So it all happens so fast, bro. It's crazy. So like I said, the year at the prep school didn't count towards eligibility. And then so I get back, I enroll at Chabot. I remember I was working at FedEx in the spring, because I left Air Force in like January. So that spring I enroll, I need some money. I'm not going to just whip them for the financial aid. I need some money in my pocket. So I start working at FedEx early mornings. I'm going to spring ball practices. And I remember stepping out there for the first time, and I was a wild card. Nobody was expecting me to show up. I wasn't fresh out of high school. I'm mid-year, so the team that had just finished playing, half of the guys that are still there, they're showing up to practice. The other half might still come out there and hang out. I was a wild card. Nobody really know who I was. They might have heard my name before, but and so I had to go out there and kind of prove myself. And so that was kind of like the first step as far as recruiting go. Like, before anybody can, know who I am beyond this little circle, this team, basically, I got to establish myself here, make a name for myself, become respected. And that way, okay, now he's one of the guys on this team, not just some random that bounced back. And so that was a little bit of a challenge. And then so yeah, you start ball in the fall. Had spring and summer ball. You start in the fall, start playing, and put some good film out there. We had a really good scheme. It would definitely be illegal today. We played man all across the board
Mhm.
and put our safety at 25. And so
Simultaneous did it too.
we played man under trail technique, so we could jump everything underneath. And our safeties was blowing. I won't. Our safeties were nasty. We had two safeties that neither one of them would have made it through a full game with today's rules.
Yeah.
They would have been ejected for a couple of weeks the way they were hitting people. And so yeah, put some good film on there. We had a good scheme, playing nothing but man. Couldn't ask for more as a corner, right? So had a short, a season, and the season ends. And so now the recruiting process picks up. And because I was eligible to transfer mid-year, I'd only been there for 6 months. So I didn't have a whole lot of time to take trips
Mhm.
and, go on visits and talk to schools. And on top of that, being undersized with only a semester or, a season of football really beyond high school, there was a decent amount of schools. I had a decent amount of smaller school offers, and I think Utah came out to see me, and UTEP came out to see me. And so I remember he's my big brother from another. His name's Adrian Ward. Went to the same high school. He went to Chabot, and he also went to UTEP. And he told the coach, he was like, "Coach, like you gotta go see him." Like they didn't come out and watch me play. The D coordinator came out, to check my vibe and meet me in person. And he came out and we talked, and I liked what he had to say. He didn't make any promises, but he kept it real, and I could always appreciate that. He looked me in my eyes and told me straight up what it was. And so, out of all the coaches that I talked to, the letters received, whatever, that just felt like the best fit for me, having that opportunity, one to transfer mid-year, and then two to be able to compete for a spot. Like he wasn't like, oh yeah, come to UTEP mid-year, we'll get you, number 2, 3 on the depth chart, something like that. You'll be one of the like no, like you gotta we want you to come play. We like how you play. We like what you do. You know, come, we'll give you an opportunity, and we'll go from there. And so that was all I could ask for. Again,
Right.
like just being confident. This recipe, this formula, had got me to where I was at that point. Thus far. So just continuing with it. I know what I can do. I know I could play. I know I belong here. It don't matter what the stat sheet says as far as height, weight, all of that. Like I know what I could do on the field. So I took that leap, and big bro Adrian Ward, talking with him through the process also helped keep me at peace with, this is a good decision. He was at home there, coming from the same area. He felt, there was a really good culture and community, the coaching staff. He was confident, so I took his word for it because big bro wasn't going to lead me wrong.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of how I ended up at UTEP.
Man, can you share the importance of you transferring to the spring or mid-year? And then also, can you share what was it like now being in El Paso, Texas, man?
Right. So first, I'd say if you are able to, as a junior college athlete, the shortest window that you can be at that junior college and have options beyond it, like everybody's situation is going to be different,
Yep.
but there's so many. Um, I guess I don't want to put it in a negative light, but there's a lot of traps in junior college. There's a whole lot. You might end up with a coaching staff that doesn't care. You might not. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can fall into.
Mhm.
And so minimizing that window while you're there kind of limits your exposure to all of these things that could go wrong. On the flip side, for me, being able to get to UTEP and transfer mid-year, when I got there in the spring, I was number 7 out of 7 corners on the depth chart.
Mhm.
Literally the last one. I remember the day one, coach put everybody's name up on the board, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, okay, it is what it is. I wasn't expecting nothing to be handed to me. By the end of spring ball, I was number 2 on the depth chart. So now I'm starting right corner, I think. I had worked my way all the way through, and now I'm, every week climbing up, running with the twos. Now I'm with the ones, and I remember like, okay, um, the feeling that not necessarily that you made it, but like now I gotta flip it. Now that I'm here, I got these guys on my back. Like, yeah, they're my teammates, but they want to play just as bad as I do.
Yep.
They got a similar background. They're competing, they're fighting. Nobody wants to sit on the bench. So now you got to kind of put the spin on it where like that desire and that hunger that got you there, you have to match that with now I got to stay here because um, I don't have a long time. I wasn't a redshirt freshman that had time to build up into this. I got another short window to work with, even though it was a little bit longer because I transferred mid-year as a freshman. Now my first season at UTEP, I was a sophomore, and yeah, as far as the culture in El Paso goes, it's I loved it, man. It was I've lived in a bunch of different places since then, and there's no place that I could describe this similar to El Paso.
Mhm.
Obviously, a very large Hispanic culture, being right there on the border. Um, it's a college town vibe. The community supported the college and all the sports. They love the football team. That support was always there. We had some big games, sold out stadiums. It was just that was my, how I envisioned my college experience, basically. We had a blast in college outside of sports, really good group of guys. I came in with like 15 plus junior college transfers.
Man,
Uh,
that's tough.
Coach Price, it was his second year there, and he wanted to kind of turn things around in a rapid pace. So rather than trying to build, plus it's tough to recruit in Texas. We're not the top school. There's so many other colleges in Texas. We
Mhm.
don't have the luxury of, we can't pull a 5-star from, Dallas, or a 5-star from Houston, because those guys are probably going UT, Texas Tech, A&M. There's all these other big schools, TCU. UTEP is kind of bottom tier in the state of Texas when it comes to recruiting. So he had a formula to bring in all these junior college athletes, and we ended up having a really good team. I think 90% of us was from California. I
Mhm.
might have been the only one from up north. Um, but yeah, so that was, getting there as a junior college transfer in an environment, a place unlike anywhere I've ever been or lived. I just soaked it all in because of the welcome that I felt. I remember meeting my roommate, Quentin Demps. He played for about a dozen years in the league.
Yep.
And I remember meeting him my first day, and we kind of walked past each other. I was headed to the dorms, and like a little head nod, like, I know you play. And he's saying, look, I know you play. And so, like, we'll catch up later. He ended up walking. He was headed to the coach's offices and came back, and we ended up chopping it up. But also, complete stranger, welcomed me with open arms. My dog still to this day, and just that feeling of like, okay, this is where I belong. Like this feels like it could be at home for me. Helped make that transition really easy.
No, that's awesome because everybody experience is not good. For me, I wanted to leave California, and I'm glad I did. And you need to develop as a man, but certain places it's not conducive for the individual. So I always love to ask people their experiences because people think it's just football. Like, oh man, I'm playing football. If you don't enjoy where you at, football is going to be affected. It's going to affect you, your playing, your mindset, your mental. Of course, we talk about mental health. So these things definitely do play a part in the decision you go. So you guys make sure when you're choosing a school that you love not only the city but the people as well, because those are the communities where you're going to be out about for the most part when you're not with your teammates. So, bro, junior year, you were voted honorable mention all conference, conference USA by the coaches. Senior year comes now, you end up getting injured. You redshirt that year, and then you come back, bro. During that time when you injured yourself, though, your senior year, what was your mindset? And then what happened after that? Because you shared that there was a coaching decision you did was best for the team, but not necessarily best for you. So can you describe how that also played in a role?
Right. So yeah, I had a sophomore year, got my feet wet, had some good stats. Junior year, kind of ended things full swing, had a really good off season. And then we talked before, the little stats that we keep track of. I didn't give up a touchdown to man-to-man coverage all year long. So that was something that I really proud. Like I had a lot of pride in that. I was like, okay, I'm trying to continue this streak because we need these things. As the coaches might not see that stat on paper, but if they also see you locking up a man-to-man coverage, like that's a little asterisk. Like year after year, this guy, he might not be the biggest, but we need every little inch that we can get on paper, on the field, whatever. And so I was looking forward to it. That I think that summer camp after my junior year tore my labrum and my ACL in camp, and I ended up playing. I played my junior year like that, and then I had surgery after that year, bounced back, speedy recovery, and I played the first 3 games was a percentage of where I could make the decision: either you keep playing and heal up and hopefully get better, or you can pull out and get that medical waiver. And so I pulled out. I was putting out bad film. My shoulder was still hurting. I didn't have my strength back, and so I pulled out. And that was where another mindset shift happened, where it's like I can't just. It's not about me, right? So I'm still a teammate. I'm still a leader on the team. And I can't be the guy that's, pouting on the side like, woe is me, this year didn't go the way I planned, da 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 da. So I made it a point, every conditioning drill, first to finish the line, first to show up at practice, last one to leave, in all the younger guys' ears, just trying to be that leader, um, vocal, which was a different change for me because, like you said, like I'm not a big talker. I don't talk a whole lot, but I can't necessarily talk with how I perform anymore because I'm not playing. So I have to become more of a vocal leader. I can still lead by example by doing certain things, condition all that, but having to be a vocal leader and not necessarily in a rah-rah aspect, but like pulling guys aside, like, hey man, like, you know, we got to get this right because this is going to affect blah, 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 blah. I probably coach more of my fellow defensive backs about off stuff or off field stuff than I actually did on the field. Because we had some young talent that was around that just same thing. I saw myself in them in my earlier years, just kind of misguided, raw, a little reckless, and just kind of needed that big brother, around the shoulder to kind of help guide them and reach their full potential. And so that was kind of my role that year. I took a lot of pride in that. I think the coaches respected it. I know the coaches respected it, and my teammates also respected it because I could have easily just sat on the side and kind of fell back, took the year off, enjoyed college, right? All of that. And so when I came back the following year, my senior year, we had one of our, he was an All American safety, strong safety, free safety. He went down in summer ball, and now the coaches are looking around like, okay, well, what do we got to back him up? And there wasn't much to offer. Like our backups, we had, I think, walk on, safeties, and we just weren't that deep. And so, as far as corners go, I was the only corner that can make that transition from corner to go play safety. We were running a 3-3-5, so it was like you're playing off man all game basically. Very little zone. We played a lot of man, but I wasn't playing corner anymore, and that was the toughest decision in my career to be, the team player. Um, in hindsight, I look back and uh, honestly, I might have pushed back a little bit more because when colleges are recruit, I'm sorry, when the NFL is coming to recruit, the first thing again they're gonna look at is your numbers. What are your stats? What do you look like? How tall are you? How big are you? In my senior year, I was the smallest Division I starting safety in the country, and so regardless of whatever numbers I put up, that wasn't gonna cut it for every single NFL team basically. And then I don't have the game film of playing corner anymore. No, at least no recent film, right? So my hope was like, oh, maybe they can see me as a nickelback or a return man. At the time we still have return specialists. So that was kind of my avenue as a hope, for another shot at playing at a higher level. And that decision, like, yeah, it made the team better. Made the coach's job a little bit easier. But for as far as my personal career, that was a really tough decision. And being in the mindset of I just want to play, put me on the field. I want the team to be good, regardless whatever it takes. It's a catch-22. Like you win some, you lose some, and that was the way that it crumbled that year. So that was tough. It's still a tough one to swallow to this day because there's always that what if.
Wow.
But it is what it is.
I think that's a big lesson, and I think that's something I've been through it. I did it in JUCO. I played safety, and I was qualified out of high school. But because I played safety, they like, we don't see you playing safety, and that really hurt me. So I had to play corner, which was my natural position, anyways. But it's like you said, I just wanted to play. I wanted to be on the field. But these kids, they need to understand. And I actually I'll share his story a little bit. There's a young man. He's played safety his whole high school career. He's a senior now, our junior, about to be a senior. We was trying to get him to our high school, recruiting him. He came out to practice, and we already had another guy who he played with him. They both played linebacker at one point, and then he changed to safety though. So I'm like, man, if you come here, man, you can play running back. You're gonna play safety. He's already getting looks at safety. He went to another school because they sold him like, man, we're gonna win here. You're gonna be the guy. The guy never lined up at safety because he was bigger than everybody else. They put him at DN. And
Mm.
then he played running back just a little bit, got hurt, and really couldn't come back. And now, he is he did attend a school, no scholarship or anything like that, and just left because it wasn't for him. And it's unfortunate that these coaches, which, like you said, we try to be selfless, but it actually hurts us as the player. That like, nah, that's not going to benefit me. So parents, I understand it's a team game. If your job is for your kids to get to the next level, you have to do what's best for your children. Unfortunately, because at the end of the day, if y'all losing and your son is balling out of his position, he's still gonna get recruited.
Mhm.
If y'all winning and your son is being okay, but he's out of position, most likely it's nothing's gonna happen. It's nothing's gonna come from it. So especially with how the transfer portal and everything is, coaches are being very tough now with how they're recruiting, man. So it is crazy. And I'm glad you shared that, bro, because kids gotta hear that.
Yeah, it's a
So
tough spot. That's a tough spot.
it is because then you have the coaches saying, "Oh, man, you selfish," but at the end of the day, uh, they know it's a stretch.
Right. You selfish too. You're trying to make the team better. You don't care about me. We both
Exactly.
selfish. So who's is worse or who's is better? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So everybody's looking out for their own stuff at the end of the day. And you gotta do what's best for the kids.
Yeah.
So, bro, we then from there, you make the transition to arena. Bro, how did this come about? Because, for all our childhood, man, our goals are to play professional at some point in time, right? Um, Basketball, baseball, football, whatever it is. And we like, man, I want to go to the next level. Share how, okay, this didn't work out. How did you get into now arena? Because arena is it's football, but it's a different game. So explain how you got into that.
Man. So yeah, I had after my senior year, I graduated early. I only had one online class my senior year, and it was just you got to go to school to play football. So I had one online class to remain eligible. That semester ended, I was done. I graduated, and so now it gave me the freedom to train and prepare to try and go to the next level, which was huge. Almost similar to that junior college deal where you transfer mid-year to give yourself an advantage. I
Mhm.
graduated early to give myself an advantage, and I didn't have to worry about going to class. I could focus 100% on training, and so I did that. Things didn't work out. I had to work out with the Niners, this and that, and yeah, it didn't work out. And so I remember after that workout, again, Coach Jack was like, "Hey, I got a coach that's in Peoria, Illinois. It's Arena 2 because the Arena 1 was down that year. That was the year they took a break. So 2009. Um, just no questions asked. I got you if you want to go play. He knows my word is good, so I'm gonna send you out there to the coach, and I got you. And so that's what happened. I ended up out there in the middle of the season, I want to say. Um, and it was crazy because I get there, go meet the coach, shake his hand, and my boy, Mike Lewis.
Oh,
Mike Lewis picked me up from the coach's facility, and we're driving back. And he get a text. He like, "Damn, I said, Coach just got fired." And I'm like Coach who? He said, "Coach Cowger, the head coach." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So instantly, I'm like, What do I do now?" Right? I came all the way out here on a limb. Luckily, that wasn't the coach that brought me out there. Um, so the other guy was still there, and I'm like, "Okay, what's next?" So 2 day waiver. Boom. Go through my 2 day waivers, have a couple of practices. They go play Green Bay that week. And so I'm like, what do I do now? Because I had one other 2 day waiver in Fresno, and same thing, good 2 days of practice, first 2 days of arena ever, right? And I dip. They don't talk to me after the second practice. They don't say nothing. So I drive back, 2 hours up north, go back home, and I get a phone call. Actually, I don't even think I got a phone call or nothing. It wasn't until I saw Dive Masters a few years later. He was like, "Bro, where did you go? What happened? Like, you was here one day and you was gone." I was like, "They never told me nothing. I don't know how this works. Like, was they gonna sign me or not? Do I got to do another waiver?" So I bounced. So yeah, I go through my 2 day waiver in Peoria, and this was probably one of the biggest blessings in my career. Coach Mike Hohensee wasn't coaching that year. He was the Chicago Rush head coach. and he wasn't coaching that year because Arena One was down. And so when the other coach got fired in Peoria, Coach Hornsey picked up the job. And so I go through a 2 day waiver with him. Boom, make the roster. I'm playing, starting in the middle, finish the season. And that season was a blur, really. I don't really remember a whole lot. I know I had a blast, play with some good guys. Um, but I remember at the end of it, Coach Hornsey was like, hey, when we come back next year, we're going to bring you into camp and, give you an opportunity to play. And so that was where, uh, like, how do you train for arena football, right? Like, it's not like you can go to a hockey field or a hockey rink and, put some grass down. And so, like, how do you train to prepare for an arena football season? And fortunately, one thing that I had in my advantage was I've been undersized my whole life. So angles are, like angles in the arena game, you can't survive if you don't understand the angles. And just cut and dry. And so, guys, you could be a 6'3", 6'4" corner, and you might get bailed out by your height every now and then. But if you don't understand the angles, you will get exposed. And so, luckily, I understood angles from the outdoor game, even though it doesn't really translate. I understood angles and how to use, my positioning. And so I was able to kind of tweak that for the indoor game, and that was how I found success.
I bet, bro, because so people need to understand, all right, the AF2 and the AF1 are two different leagues. So essentially, when you go up to Chicago Rush, you're a rookie. So your rookie year, though, bro, you are in the conversation for defensive player of the year. You led the league in interceptions that year, bro. You shared, how do you go about training for this? But how were you able to actually catch on to the game so fast? Because the motion is a little different. It is like a CFL type game, but smaller, 8 men on a basketball court, essentially. So how were you able to catch on? Fire, especially, almost win a defensive player of the year.
Um, well, first I had a really good team around me. I had a lot of veterans, a lot of guys with knowledge of the game. Um, I was again super blessed. If you play in that middle position, that's where the ball is going. So the opportunities are going to be there. That could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, depending on how you handle it. And so seeing that action and having those guys around me, we had a really good front. Our linebackers were solid. And my motivation at the time was I don't want to be the weak link. I think there was only two of us that started that year for the rush that didn't have any experience as far as like Arena One went. Me and Mike Austin, we came in green, didn't have a whole lot of experience, and so we picked up the game pretty quick because we had all these veterans around us, and just understanding like I'm talking to my backside corner, my front side corner. Like, hey, they're giving me tips and pointers. And I forgot to tell you last time, I actually was calling the plays for the first half of the year,
Really?
which is wild. So like we be in situations, our our defensive coordinator, no disrespect, he wasn't necessarily a defensive guy, right? And so trying to coach situational stuff and like he's just not quite seeing the game like we are out there on the field. So he put us in some bad situations, and it got to the point to where my boy Nigel Rogers, he was like what coaches call? I don't know. He's like, man, call something else. And so I think I called something else, put us in another coverage, and it worked. And then we do it again, and it started working. So it got to the point to where coach would throw something out there, and we had the flexibility where I could either stay with it or I'm going to overrule him and we're going to play something different. And we had a veteran team that, in the secondary, we understood that and we were always on the same page, which all it would have taken was for one thing to, blow a coverage or something and not go right. And I might not have a job anymore. But we ended up with a new DC halfway through the season, and he came in and picked up basically right where I had left off. I didn't have to call any more plays. He was on point with everything, and it made things really easy. And like I said, just studying from the veterans that were there, I got I had kind of a love-hate relationship with guys like Damian Harrell. We had battled. He was, I don't know if he is a Hall of Fame receiver yet. Um, if he isn't, he needs to be and should be. But he was, one of the top dogs and as a far receiver goes. And so I'll pick guys' brains like that, try and find out like what are you looking to attack? Like what do we have like fun mid game, but after the games, we chop it up a little bit and like the mutual respect was there because I knew how great he was as a player, and he respected, my craft as an athlete too. And so just learning from guys, just watching film, watching other DBs on film, getting a chance to talk to other guys that had similar skill sets, guys that were putting up good numbers. I'm watching like, why are they having success? What are they doing? And how can I use what they might have in their bag and add it to mine to make my game better? So there was a lot of that going on. That really just, like I said, the perfect storm of having a really good coach and Coach Honesty, having a solid group of veterans around me. Um, and then the angles of understanding the angles of the game, all of that combined to help me have a really successful year. And I think I came up just shy. I was probably runner up for defensive player of the year as a rookie, which that was a big deal for me. Like that was something I really wanted. That wasn't something that was on my radar at the start of the season. It just kind of unfolded as I'm going through these games, getting my hands, catching picks and stuff like that. So that was one of my best years playing.
Nah, bro, that's impressive for essentially 2 years in the game, and you already making adjustments already. And of course, you got your guys there, but to take that on because um it looks easy to play, but when somebody running at you full speed for 15 yards, it get a little different. Your heart start beating. So that's just a testament of you, bro, of your football IQ of the game. Now, I want to ask you this, man, and if you can, give me your top four receivers that you went against playing arena.
Top four receivers. Oof. Off top, Brandon Tompkins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's
BT.
another guy that understood the angles of the game. He's quick. He'll talk to you. He's gonna let you know about it. He's tough. Um, Good hands, good route running. I had tore my ACL when BT was a rookie in Spokane, and so I got to practice and play against him a little bit. And then, I spent a lot of time on the sideline watching him grow and doing the same thing that I did in college, kind of like helping him out. Um, so yeah, BT is definitely up there. Damian Harrell is up there just because I respect him so much. He's put up the numbers and the work, and the game just looked easy for him. Um, I can't remember the dude. He played for Jacksonville. I think Dallas Baker.
The
I think
name sound familiar.
I think it was Dallas Baker, but he was a problem, bro. He was like 6'5", like slim frame, but he was just a problem because he understood the game. He knew how to get open. It wasn't like the cookie cutter routes where 7 steps into the corner. He knew how to get where he needed to be 8 different ways. And
Exactly.
so as an undersized corner, that makes it tough. He knew how to use his body to keep you from getting like he was a problem to guard. I like the challenge, but I think I've for sure had my worst game ever playing arena against him when they came to Chicago, and he gave me like 4 maybe.
Hmm.
Uh, that was a tough night. Uh, Trying to think. I didn't really get a whole lot of Reggie Gray. We did some bracketing, covered him 1-on-one, but watching him on film, I could understand why he had a lot of success. Um, he was a great athlete, great route runner, speed. Same thing, kind of that same, almost like not quite BT, but like he talked to you. Um, I knew he wasn't as tough as BT because I couldn't wait to get my hands on him. He wasn't very big. Uh,
Exactly.
but I guess I could throw him in there, at a spot. And then number five, whew, number five is a crapshoot because there were so many athletes that could fit in that. If I had to play against Adrian Tennell in his prime, he was up there. Marquis White was another one. Um, Gio, I can't remember Gio from Spokane. I forget his last name, but there's a bunch of guys that usually the ones that understood the game well enough to know that one, it's a timing thing, right? And then the angles of it. They didn't have to be the greatest athlete, the greatest route runner, but if they understood those things and they could run fast or they were big, that made it really difficult to guard.
Man, I think you hit something right now because um playing DB in arena is a lot different because of the body types. Like in the NFL outdoor game, your typical receiver is like 6'3", you probably have a guy 6'4", a little taller, but it's just a big body. He can't necessarily move. An arena game, these guys are like 6'5", and they can move, they can jump, they can do all the other stuff that a smaller guy can do. So you mentioned you can be sticking a Reggie Gray BT for 3 reps, then you got a big body, and it's just a whole different way you got to play him and then how they run routes. So I think arena is very unique in that set where I may never on an outdoor game, I may never stick a guy uh press or off man by like for 5 times in a game. In arena, you gotta see that guy constantly, like, but they gonna change it up. And I think that's what makes arena special. And it makes receiver special too, because you get to appreciate, like, bro, you do something so much different than this other person. Like I had to figure you out, and it might take some reps. You might look at film, you be like, man, I see what he's doing, but it's not really making sense how he getting open.
Yeah.
So it's crazy how you said it. It's just going through my mind as you was breaking each receiver down, because man, those nuance of the receivers is very unique. And
Well, the versatility of it too as a defensive back, like you said, we haven't even started to talk about pressing the motion, right? So if you play in the middle, you got to be able to press the motion man from 15 yards deep,
yep.
and he's got a head start running at you. And it doesn't matter if he's 5'9", 185 or 6'5", 235. You have to be able to hold your ground. And so like the skill set, like you have to be able to stand in there and muscle with the bigger guys, but you got to be able to get, lateral with the smaller guys and be able to flip your hips and get running. That's to be honest, I'm surprised that there's not more corners that play that position, that play the middle in arena, that don't go have success outdoors, that just don't get that opportunity, because you got to be able to do everything basically. You got to be able to cover. You got to be able to cover big and small. You got to be able to cover guys that are quick, slow, possession, whatever. That was a very tough position to grow into and learn how to master it.
Nah, man, because I remember I went to a CFL workout. I think it's my 3rd year, and I'm like, this is so easy. Like, I'm like, this is so easy. Like all this space, y'all
Mhm.
y'all can have the motion. I got still 10 yards, and then y'all still got a 20-yard end zone.
Long throw.
Man,
Yeah.
come on, bro. Like, come on, this is too easy. So, man, I definitely understand when you talking about, man, like that success going back outdoors. Like, man, you would think scouts would be recruiting that middle guy more often for the nickel or whatnot, because man, just everything you have to do, and you still gotta get in there on the runs. And we know
Yeah.
running game, this is not a typical, 215 running back. We talking about 60, 360. We talking about 300 sometimes linemen that you got to get in there and still make tackles. So man, I think you hit it on the head with that, bro. So, bro, of course, arena is a different game, but what did you learn? What were some significant lessons that you learned during your time for arena, rather on the field or off the field?
Um, I started to learn the business side of it. Like up until that point, football had been uh, recreational, right? A sport for fun. Like, yeah, there was always that business aspect of it for the coaching staff. But once you start getting paid to play, now you become part of that business. And I remember my first introduction to that was in camp with the Chicago Rush that year. And, start camp, having a great camp. And um, about halfway into camp, guys start showing up, like veterans, right? Like who is this? Like you just got here. Like what you look real comfortable. And like Dewan Alfonso, another Hall of Famer, right? He was our Jack legend in Chicago. They loved him. I remember when Zoe showed up midway through camp. I'm like, man, who is this dude? He's coming in here with this swagger, like I'm the dog. Like, and it makes sense after playing with him and knowing who he is. But if this is your first introduction to it, you're trying to figure things out. Like, damn, coach, like I thought we were shrinking the roster, not shrinking it and growing it again, right? So same thing. Sammy Parker comes in. We lose a couple receivers, and Sammy Parker comes in, and I knew who Sammy was from watching him on film, with the Chiefs in Oregon. And same thing, I'm like, damn, we just let go a really good receiver, but we just brought in another probably even better receiver. And that day of cuts, the first receiver the first guy on the list that was cut um, was I thought had one of the better camps out of all the receivers. And he comes out and he's like, man, they cut me. And he was a jokester. We're like, nah, no way. Like, ain't no way they cut you. Like, he was like, nah, like, I'm for real. Like, I'm done. And so I remember that feeling of just everything sinking. Like, if he had a good camp and they let him go, I feel like I had a good camp. Nobody's safe, right? So sitting in there and trying to like, it was a reality check. Like, whew, like okay, this is real. Well, I had never been called into a meeting room to know if whether or not I made the team. So like another business aspect of it, like you sit down, they go through everything with you, they tell you whether you make it or break it. Um, and so the business side of it started to unfold and taken away from it. Um, how do I start to create and market myself as a business now? Because the turnaround, you might be in one city the one year and then another city the next and then another city the next. Like it just you don't really see guys stay on the same team for a long time. So now you got to start thinking of yourself as a business and your reputation and the film you put out there and the people that you rubbing elbows with and your resources was huge. Like you got to really be conscious and mindful of how you operate and move because you could be in another city next year, or your coach could be in another city. And is he going to want to bring you on? Is that going to be an opportunity for you to come and play? Um, in my case, for example, I was in Chicago 2010. The Spokane Shock won it that year with Coach Keith, and I didn't know who Coach Keith was. I knew nothing about him other than I'm watching the Arena Bowl on film with my roommate Mike Austin, watching him, and we're like, I would love to go and play for that dude. We know how hostile that environment was, but just watching his enthusiasm and his energy as a coach was like, that's where I want to go play. And so because I had gotten that mindset of establishing myself as a business rather than just a player, on the field, he reached out to me that off season, and so I was like, cool, like this is it couldn't get any better. I'm going to where returning defending champs. I know they got a really good team. I know he's a good coach from watching him. The environment, the atmosphere, couldn't ask for a better market. Um, but it was because I got in that mindset and mentality of like, I got to start moving as a business, right? So everybody that I rubbed shoulders with, make sure it was a good first impression, knew that it was always business with me. I wasn't, some clown out there messing around and like was always focused. Like, there's a time and a place for everything. But when it was go time, I wanted to make sure that those with me and around me knew that when whistle blows, they know exactly what they're gonna get out of me every single night. I might not perform to my best, but they know there's not going to be a question of what my effort looked like or what kind of teammate or what kind of player mentality I was going to have that night. And so that helped carry me a long way through my career. And even to this day, the relationships that I've established through understanding that I'm now a business, I can probably still reach out to some of those resources and to this day.
I mean, I think that's key, and I think that kids have to now operate. I tell my kids, you're an independent contractor now, if you're in high school, especially for these colleges. So, and the sooner we understand, yes, this is a game to us, but it's a business to everybody else, the faster we will be on track to help ourselves make better decisions as far as where we go, and then putting ourselves in position to make sure after football, because each of us, we're our own brand, and this game does not last forever. But if you understand that and set up your brand correctly while you have the exposure, I tell my kids now, you will have no bigger exposure than in college football, because all these people who know you, regardless, even if it's a big school or not, the football team has the most fans out of any fans in college. Now, high school is different because you can be a legend in your city, but if resources are always not available. College, though, there's people who you can contact with that you will never would have met on a day-to-day basis out in the community. So guys got to understand it, and that's key what you said, bro. Very key. So, bro, I asked you before, who was some guys, and you mentioned earlier, who other than receivers, who are other guys that you talk to as far as a mentorship or teammates that just made an impact in your life on a football field?
Yeah, we talked last time, Kaiser. We didn't get to spend a whole lot of time together or talking a whole lot, and it was kind of that mutual respect. If we're watching Philly on film, I'm sorry, was it Philly? Where was he? I think he was in Philly back when I was yeah, so I think it was Philly, but where they're watching Philly play an opponent and I'm watching, you're watching your position, right? You're watching what they do. And he had a lot of success, had a lot of interceptions, and you know, I'm trying to compete with that. And so being humble enough to know that I don't have all the answers. I can't I can still grow, right? I can learn from everybody. Being able to like watch him on film or talk to him in person as far as like what's this and that, like how you jump that, what's going through your head, how you guard this dude. um Being, like I said, being humble enough to step back and reach out there to other athletes like guys like Kaiser. um Trying to think who else. I stepped into it so young, man. Like my secondary in Chicago, Nigel Rogers, was another. He had played for a while and had a really good understanding of the game. And just listening to the things that they said, Zoe in Chicago, listening to the things that they would tell me. But I think ultimately the stuff that I got from the quarterbacks, because the quarterbacks will talk to you. They
Mhm.
don't, they're not worried about getting hit by you. There's no like real like feud, so you might be able to have a quick conversation with the quarterbacks in the game. And our quarterback, Russ Mickna in Chicago, would always preach to me, stay close, like, just stay close. And that stuck with me throughout the rest of my career. I wish I would have had that mentality throughout my entire career, because realistically, if the offense has a perfect play, right, perfect snap, perfect, pass, perfect route, perfect catch, there's very little that you can do as a defensive back. You can be perfect, but they have the advantage because they know what's going on. So if you can do what you can to stay close, all it takes is one imperfection, and now that play looks a little bit different. You might bat it down. You might get your hands on it and pick it off. You might even be close enough to where, like, whew, that was close, and we might not do that no more. Um, so that advice and that wisdom was critical. Brian Grieve, it was a Milwaukee quarterback, the San Jose quarterback. I forget his name, but he was an OG in the game. And just listening to some of the things, I'm also listening to what they're telling their receiver on the way back to the huddle. This is small enough field, and if it's quiet enough or if I'm close enough, I can hear him tell like next time you want to step on his toes more, or next time you want to try and get outside leverage, and then make him think you're going like so. I'm always, like I said, learning by observing and listening. And so I think I learned the most listening to some of these quarterbacks and the things that they would tell their receivers, or if they were kind enough to talk to me a little bit. Some of the things that they would tell me and try maybe they weren't trying to help me out and they were just talking, talking noise. But the quarterbacks gave me a lot of insight on how to, be a successful defensive back in the Arena League.
Nah, that's dope, bro. I never even thought about asking other receivers. I always will ask my teammates. But that's wise, man. And that's the way you get to perfect your craft and get better, bro. So 2013, this is when we become teammates, come down to Utah. I remember you came down late. Ferg didn't talk at all, kept to himself. But I do remember, and it was vivid. I remember like it's yesterday. I remember we was in San Antonio, and it was either Braylon or Tony, one of them. It was their first game, and I believe this was our first game playing together because we never played together at that point, like on
Mhm.
the field. And they was like, man, I'm nervous, and he was like, man, all this is a glorified practice at the end of the day. And I still remember that to this day. But also, I remember he was like, you shared with us, he's like, bro, I don't know how much longer I got with this playing wise. What was your thought process at that time? And how did that start to help you to make that transition to the next step?
Um, Man, you start to have an appreciation for it. Like Father Time is undefeated, right? Nobody can play forever. And so as early on in your career, you don't really see that light at the end of the tunnel, like it's coming, right? I'm here, I'm happy to be here. this is gonna last forever. And then, things happen, whether it's injuries or you have this idea that I'm only gonna play for 3 or 4 years, hopefully get a shot, and then you play for 3 or 4 years, you don't get that shot. So you start, these things start going on in your head. And really the the biggest thing, it kind of took me back to the whole reason I started playing football in the first place was the enjoyment of it. Like, yeah, throughout time it became a business and it became, an occupation, whatever, career. But I'm still playing this game because I love it. And I don't, it's not the pay that I love, obviously, because we wasn't making big bucks. It's not, the conveniences and like all the attention. Like, that's not the stuff that I play for. That's not the stuff that I love. It was hanging out with the teammates, competing, having success, putting stuff, like working so hard at something and being able to put it to use on game night. That was the stuff that I loved. And so once I got close to the end of my career and started really appreciating those things and being able to pass on. I remember having that conversation with Braylon too, because you could see it in his eyes. Like, we all knew he was a good athlete, good receiver. It's like, bro, what's wrong with you? Like, what? He's like, I'm nervous, man. He's never shy to speak. He's like, man, if you don't get out of here with that, like, this is really just a glorified practice. Like, everything that we've done has prepared us for this point. Like, yeah, it's a little bit louder and, there's noise and this and that, and like the game counts, but it's still just a glorified practice. And I remember seeing like his shoulders kind of like settle in a little bit, and then he kind of could breathe a little more freely. And yeah, that was I remember that San Antonio game too, because my wife now, but she had came out to visit for that game, and so I had family in town. It's like, man, I'm just gonna enjoy this. Like, I remember sitting on the wall pregame, feet dangling, just like I'm enjoying this atmosphere because one, I didn't have family come to a whole lot of arena games. They came to college games. My mom had came to that game because she was out in Dallas. Um, so having family at an arena game was like, man, this is I want to enjoy this moment, right? And so understanding that and putting in perspective that I don't know how many of these I got left. This could be the last one. I could be done next year. Just really in that mentality of like, I'm going to enjoy this ride while it lasts. I wish I had more time with that team because we had a really good team. We had a really good squad at the beginning of the year. I was like, this is, this I like the way this team is looking. We had a really, really good team, and then things happen, injuries, changes were made, this and that. But I really wish that I had more time around you guys. I had to leave halfway through the season to go back and take care of some family business. But yeah, that was a tough, tough part of my career to walk away from because I left before I was ready to and knew that I still had some left in the tank, but I couldn't continue playing because I had to go take care of the family. And so for that to end my career essentially, that wasn't that wasn't what I wanted to do, which is why I did everything I could. 3 years later, I was able to come back after I work a full-time job, still show up to practice, travel in games, do whatever things I had to make happen at work to make it right because I could not walk away from the game that I played for so long and gave so much to, and then that be the end of it. And so I had to come back for another run at it, which is why I did in 2016.
Yeah, man. We all as football players, we want to go out on our own. And
Hmm.
man, sometimes the game it just doesn't do it for us. But bro, did you know even that year, because I think we won like 2 games in Utah that year. It was something stupid. They just went to the championship game prior. No, the whatever the division playoff prior. I think we won a couple of games. You know, we was top 5 in defense still that year.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And what's wild is, in my eyes, I still believe he was the best quarterback. But for whatever reason, Tommy G just didn't perform what we had all hoped. And what 6'6", 6'7" quarterback, understood the game. Salk as an O coordinator, he had a great scheme. I didn't like playing against his scheme because he really paid attention to tendencies and technique. And so he knew when you would slack off or when you were going to jump something, when to hit you with the double move. Like the perfect formula, and we got the defense to match it. And yeah, for whatever reason, Tommy G just not solely on him, but offensively, that's the leader of that unit, right? So that's where it starts. and we had a really good team, real good group of guys too. Man, that's why I didn't know we were still top five in the
Wow.
defensive statistic.
Yeah, Keith told me because he traded for me after they folded. He traded for me in Orlando. He was mad. He was mad at Tommy because we led the league in interceptions. So we led the league in turnovers, and we were still top five. And turning the ball in the arena is like sacred.
Mhm.
You can't do that. But yeah, man. But I think you missed. Well, you did miss training camp, but I think it was a blessing, bro. We had 63 guys, and for training camp. This is
Dang.
including waivers. This is including everybody. I think we had like 12 to 10 on waivers. And I was on waivers. I was on waivers. So it was like, that's why, like, when Furry came, I'm like, dang, Furry come in late and shoot.
With that vet
I'm not
card.
mad. I'm not understanding. I'm not understanding nothing. Just like you, like, man, guys coming in late. Like, hold on, we just
Yeah.
cut the roster. What's up?
Right. I had been there, so I understood it. I had my daughter was born in February, and I told Coach Keith, I was like, Coach, I need a few weeks. Like I'm there, I'm ready to go. I need a few weeks. My daughter was just born. I got to be there. Initially, I have to, and I understood that that was part of the business, right? Like that wasn't unusual. That was normal. It gives the coaching staff an opportunity to look at more guys. You can keep some guys on retainer, in your hip pocket for later in the year if you need them. But I remember showing up like, damn, like this ain't what I thought it was gonna be. Like I knew we had a good team, but you was out there. We had Mo.
Yep.
Mo was out there green, but as any level he's ever played on, just a magnet for big plays and interceptions. We had a really good team. I'm like, damn, like okay, I can't just waltz into camp halfway through and think that this job is mine. Like I really gotta get to it.
Now, I think what was awesome about that team is we supported. I never felt like any hate, especially from the DBs. Like everybody played middle, everybody played field. Like that's how Keith believed play field, Jack. We could all play in unison. And we helped out best way we can. Injury, somebody go down, next person up, and we was rooting for everybody. That's one thing I loved about it. And you don't get that with everybody. And I needed that as a rookie. That helped my confidence. Man, I was like, man, I can really play in this league and do something, man. So that was great.
Mhm.
So, bro, we talk about transitioning out, and you talking about leaving the game on your own. Um, it's hard for people to transition on to the next step of their life after playing football for so long. I mean, we've been playing for 16 plus years, depending on how young you've been playing it. But now you find your next footing to become a firefighter. What was that transition for you to make that transition from playing, professional football? Of course, we work these odd jobs, nothing that really, we really think like, oh man, I can find a career in this. So now, like, man, I think I found something I love to do.
I really it kind of just landed in my lap. I stumbled on it. My mom told me since a young age I always wanted to be a firefighter, but um, that wasn't really on my radar, especially while I was playing ball. It just wasn't something I'd ever thought about. So when the time comes and you get older and you know that your clock is running out as far as your playing days go, and you grow a family and you start seeing things in life and you have a different perspective on things, you start to realize that okay, what's important, like what's the next step going to be. I knew that I didn't want a desk job. I wanted to do something active. I've always had a heart for helping people, whether it was coaching, training, teaching. Every job that I've had has kind of been in the area of some sort of service, right? So I knew I wanted to have an opportunity to help people. And the more that I looked into it, I was like, man, this is kind of a cool gig. Like they get to do some cool stuff. Like it's funny talking to my boys back home. All of them have this perception that I run into burning buildings every single time I walk in the door. And I'm like, man, I'm not doing that. Like that's not what it is. Like this ain't a movie. Like for first of all, most of our calls are medical, right? So I'm not always seeing a bunch of fire. Second, when I do see fire, it's calculated risks, and it's very similar in the aspect. I tell people that I work with all the time. It's like, or people that ask me about work all the time. and say, how do you deal with certain things? And I'm like, man, when you play any sport, really, you train, you put in the hours of training, right? You train, you do all of this stuff, and then you have game night. And you probably do something on game night where you're like, damn, I didn't know I did that. Or how did I don't even remember doing that. And it's because you've trained and prepared for that situation. And firefighting is no different. We put in the hours, we train, we work hard at something. So when I do see or come across something that most people would like, fight or flight type, um, it's second nature. It's an afterthought. It's not even like I'm like, oh, like man, that's messed up. Um, it's like you train for that moment, you know how to handle the situation, and then you might have a reflection period afterwards, like, man, that was messed up. But at least while you're in it, so that was a real easy transition. I don't have a weak stomach when it comes to seeing messed up stuff, and mostly because we train on it, so like it's an afterthought. Like I said, it doesn't really not absorb in that moment. Um, so that transition was pretty smooth. The team environment aspect of it helped. Work ethic. There's a lot of correlations from playing a team sport to a career as a firefighter, and so that kind of marriage of the two made it really easy. I came in green, like uh, I didn't know like fireman's terminology. I didn't know what a coupling was, like how to connect the hoses, and I knew nothing about none of it. I don't have a family lineage of firefighting, no exposure. I was super green, but I knew how to work hard. I knew how to show up with a good attitude. I knew how to be a good teammate. And so those things carried me along the way until I started to figure out how to be a good firefighter and actually learn the skills of the job. And so, again, having a good team around me was also critical. I got to work with a really, really good group of guys. And I think historically, the culture of firefighting is we all have each other's back. We all want each other to go home. We'll do anything for one another. And it was emphasized in the department that I work for. I'm fortunate enough to work with a really solid group of guys that, those things are never a question, never a doubt.
For sure. So what information can you give guys, kids who are looking into becoming a firefighter? How do they start their career? What are the best ways for them to navigate and to soon become a firefighter?
Man, first and foremost, you gotta have a clean record.
Mm,
That's with any major career when it comes, time for life to hit you. Yeah, we all make mistakes. We make mistakes. We drop the ball, we fumble here and there, but there comes a time where your mistakes got to be limited. You got to start growing and learning from mistakes. I tell the kids that I used to coach, uh, your reputation is like your credit score, right? So you don't pay your credit cards off. It takes one. Like, you work so hard to build up your credit to A1, and then you do one thing and boom, you drop way down. And it takes a long time to build back up. And your reputation is the same way. You can work so hard your entire life to establish this reputation, and you have one misstep, and now people are going to judge you or associate you to that one misstep. Unfortunately, that's just the way things work. So having a clean record, um, it doesn't necessarily disqualify you from everything because more fire departments are opening that hiring pool up. But having a clean record, which means some of the reckless things that kids might be into, um, you know, there's a risk associated with all of it. And if you're willing to take that risk, you better be willing to sit down and look your employer in the face when they ask you, have you gotten any trouble? And you got to tell them like, yeah, I did X, Y, and Z. And they tell you, it's time to kick rocks because you made that decision years ago. And yeah, it might not necessarily always be right, but for it to be held against you, a decade later. But if you're sitting next to another candidate where you guys are neck and neck and they don't have that thing in their past, that's an easy pick. And with the way that the fire service is, the hiring pool is always going to be there. And so if I can choose a guy that, might have some bumps in his history or a guy that has a solid history and they're exactly the same, the business, right, they're going to go with that other guy 10 times out of 10. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, um, just staying in shape mentally and physically. It's not for everybody. You're gonna see some messed up things. You're gonna deal with some messed up stuff. So understanding that it's not gonna be for everybody, and it's okay if you get into it and you find you don't like something, something really bothers you. that's more than fine. It's not for everybody. And so that's, being able to accept that. And also, there's ways, I think we talked about a little bit last time, you can pursue any dream or any passion simultaneously to your playing career. Like, I think for so long we've groomed athletes into thinking that you have to have a plan B. So, like, you're going to focus on plan A, and you got a plan B in your back pocket, which is cool. But if plan B doesn't come out of your back pocket until plan A is over with, now you're behind the guys who started maybe a plan double A. Like, I'm going to school, I'm building my brand, I'm building my business while playing this sport. And on the side, I still, like, man, Deion Sanders, my idol to this day, because the way that he's deployed himself and his family as a business model, um, I truly admire that. Like, you look at Shador and those guys, they're playing the game they love at a high level and doing the things that they love to do, but at the same time, they've got their plan B in or their plan AA in motion. And
Mhm.
I couldn't really describe it much better. Like, you watch how they operate, that business is, if football fails, they still have that avenue that's already further along, as opposed to if they waited until, years, whatever later to pull out that plan B. So having whatever your passion is, in motion, don't wait until, you're done playing, because that also will help with that transition. Like you said, we have so much of our identity tied into ourselves as athletes that when that door closes, now it's like it's a frantic scramble. Like, I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know where to go. I don't know who I am. Athletes struggle, mentally. There's all kinds of ways, like PTSD, all that stuff. And so if you are able to have a simultaneous plan going while you're pursuing your dream, when that door closes, because eventually it will, it's just an easier transition, because now you're not so attached to, like, I gotta make it, I gotta make it, I gotta. I've had something else brewing at the same time, which I can easily step into, whether you've been playing for 2 years or 12 years. So that would definitely ease that transition, is having that plan, double A in motion.
Nah, Ferg, man, great wisdom, man. I appreciate you having you on, man. Uh, I'm pretty sure, and I'm asking, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be guys who see this interview and they're like, man, I want more information. Is it okay for the kids to reach out to you, man, and ask you more questions about the firefighter career?
Absolutely, man. Reach out for anything, whether it's, um, we all can't be the 6'1", 6'2" defensive back that's running a 4-2, 4-3. And I think, from a undersized perspective, I think the coaches that have backgrounds similar to us, that have played at that level with those guys, we couldn't just rely, not saying that they did, but we couldn't just rely solely on our physical attributes. We had to find ways to, like, get it out the mud and, make it work for us. So we have a more of a well-rounded understanding. So whether it's football, whether it's fire service, whether it's, I mean, I've worked in just about every type of industry. So I got knowledge to give. I'm willing to give it. I love helping out the youth. That's what I'm here for. And the last thing I want to do is leave this earth with all this wisdom I've hopefully gained throughout my years, and not have passed it on to family, friends, complete strangers, whoever is willing, because that's what's going to ultimately help. Cliche, but that's what's going to make the world a better place. Is if we can help others through the things we've been through, sharing our experiences without having them go through it themselves.
Nah, for sure, man. That'd be awesome, man. And I already know, but I just had to make sure I had to ask, man. But
Yeah,
definitely appreciate you, Ferg, man. Love you. Tell the fam I said hello, and we'll be talking soon as well.
yeah, man. All love. Appreciate you having me. Have a blast.
Problem, bro. Have a good one.
All right.